there, it's Nina here with Walla Stamping. Thank you for joining me today. So this is a little card we're going to be making, and I think it's adorable, and I hope that you do too. Now it's going to be featuring some new products that just was released today for purchase, the Stampin Blends. I know you've seen me probably in the last month make a couple of projects using these. As a demonstrator, Stampin Up gives me the privilege of being able to buy product before they release it to the public for sale, so that as a demonstrator I have the ability to work with it, use it, get to know it, find some tips and tricks, as well as some projects that I can share with you. Now in particular today, one of the things that I want to share with you is the color lifter marker. This marker is really cool, and it is a must-have if you're going to use these Stampin' Blend markers. It can do so many things for you. Let's say that you're coloring a project and you accidentally color outside the line. This can correct that mistake. It can also help you with blending, as well as doing some highlighting. So I'm going to be showing you a couple of those techniques in this card project today. Something else we're going to be using is the Color Me Happy stamp set. Very cute. It's a new release along with the blends, and I think that you're going to like this also. It has a couple of little birds, a few different sentiments, some lanterns, a flower, all made to use the markers with, so that you can get started learning how to color with them. Now something else that I want to make mention of is Momento Ink. This is what you want to use when you are using the Stampin' Blends markers. This is created to use especially with an alcohol-based marker, and Stampin' Up does recommend that you use the Momento Ink when you are using the Stampin' Blends markers. So here's our little card. Let's run on over to my craft table and get started on this project. Here's everything you're going to need to create this card. First of all, the card base is a piece of Blushing Bride cardstock. It's 8.5 by 5.5. You'll fold it on the 8.5 inch side, and it'll give you a 4.25 by 5.5 inch card. Then for this cute little heart, you're going to need another piece that's 2.25, or excuse me, 2.5 by 2.5. Then for the little Oh Hello sentiment, I have a piece of Whisper White that is 3 by 1, and for this piece we're going to do all of our stamping and coloring on a piece of Whisper White that's 3 by 5. For the matting in the background, I have a piece of Whole Lot of Lovely, and this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. So let's start out by just folding our cardstock in half along the 8.5 inch side. Then just use our bone folder and get that crease in there really nicely. Then let's go ahead and do our stamping and our coloring. So as I mentioned to you, we're going to be using the Color Me Happy stamp set. I'm going to be using both of these little birds, which I think are adorable, and I'm going to be using the Oh Hello from this stamp set. I'm also going to be using the Colorful Season stamp set. This branch, You Make Me Smile, and this little flower image is what I'm going to be using from that. So let me get my cardstock in here, and we will start stamping and coloring. Now you will want to use a piece of scrap paper behind your coloring, because the markers do bleed through your cardstock. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my Tuxedo Black Momento Ink. The first thing I want to stamp is the You Make Me Smile sentiment. So I'm going to open that up and get this stamped. And as you can tell from my sample card here, it's in the center and very close to the bottom of the cardstock. So I'm going to do the same with this one. Then while I have this ink out, let's go ahead and stamp our Oh Hello and get that done. I'm going to get that inked up really well, and it looks like I've got plenty of ink on there. I'm just going to stamp this down pretty much right in the center of this, and then we'll be hand cutting it out. Now I'm going to wait just a minute before I stamp those little birds. I'm going to grab my chocolate chip ink next, and I'm going to stamp this little branch. So I'm going to get that inked up, and this branch is going to go right above where I have You Make Me Smile. Then I'm going to use my Sweet Sugar Plum. And I'm going to use that little floral image. But as you can see, I have loved on this stamp set. It is so stained. There's a few little petals that look like they're flying off the flowers over here. I don't want to use those. I only want to use the flowers themselves. So I've got those little petals kind of hanging off the edge of my block. And I'm going to just ink up those other little flowers that I just want to use. Get that lined up and stamp that down. Now I'm going to reopen my Momento ink and I'm going to get my little bird stamped. So one of them I'm going to put right over here. And the other one I'm going to put across on the other side of the branch. So cute! I love birds. In my craft room I have a few pictures that have birds in them, and I really like it a lot. So we've got that stamped. Now what we need to do is our coloring. Let's bring in our markers. Now we're going to do the blue bird first, because this is where I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I wanted to share with you on blending and using the color lifter marker. So first thing I'm going to do, and by the way, this is light and dark pool party, this is dark smoky slate, and this is the color lifter. The way you know the color lifter is it has a white cap on the end. Now something that you may notice is the caps are going to fit very snugly on these, and there is a purpose for that. You want them to keep your markers from drying out, and they need to fit snugly in order to accomplish that. So it's a good thing that they fit on there really tight. Right now what I'm doing is just going and coloring in the bird. Get it all colored in with this light pool party first. I'm going to take the dark pool party next, and I'm just going to run this in areas where I want some shadowing to be. Then I'll come back in with the light pool party and blend those together. And then lastly, I'm going to take the dark smoky slate, excuse me, and I'm going to put a little bit of that color just down in there, come back in with my dark pool party and blend that gray and the dark pool party together. Now already you can tell that I have a little bit of highlighting going on, but let's take our color lifter marker and we're going to come in here and we're just going to run that on his belly and right here on the top of his head. Now while the marker is still damp, you're not going to necessarily be able to tell that it has lifted some of that color, but once it's dry you will see the difference. Now on this little bird we're going to go ahead and use the light and the dark pink pirouette. So like I did on the first one, I'm just going to color her in all over with the light pink pirouette. Then I'm going to take the dark, and just like I did on the other bird, I'm going to fill in some areas to create shadows. Then come back with the light color again and blend them together. Now something I did forget to do on the first ones is color their beaks and their little legs. Let me grab a color to do that with. I've decided to just use some of the light pumpkin pie. And I'm going to use the end of the marker that has a more fine tip on it, because these are really small areas to have to color in. Okay. Now I see a little boo-boo that I made right here underneath where I was coloring the tail. The way that you fix a mistake is just by pushing that color with your color lifter back toward the area where it needs to be. And again, this is going to be wet for a minute, so you're not necessarily going to be able to tell that that has removed that color and pushed it back into the tail feathers of that bird, but it did, I promise you. So what I'm going to do next is go ahead and attach my birds to the front of my designer series paper. Just going to use snail. And I'm going to attach this kind of to the bottom right hand side, just like that. What I want to do next is add my ribbon to this like you see here. So I'm going to use my snail and just put some of that adhesive on both sides of this ribbon. Then I'm going to stick that down right there behind my card. Run a little bit of snail over about, I would say, 2 inches, because you want to make room for your little doily and your heart. So you can always just put this in place if you want to. As a matter of fact, I think that I will put this in place so that I will know where to tie my bow. So I'm going to stick that down right there. I'm going to cut my ribbon, but leave enough over so that I'll have some to tie a bow with. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to put some adhesive on there. And actually, I'll just put it on one side this time. Pull that across and snip it, giving myself enough to tie a bow. Put a little more snail right there to hold this down on this side. Then we'll go ahead and get our bow tied. And just snip off the extra that you don't need. This ribbon has made even me, a non-bow tying person, into a person who can tie a bow. Yay me. All right. I have a little bit of adhesive on the back of this cardstock already because I almost forgot and placed it on my card front before I put all that ribbon and everything on there, and that would have been a boo-boo. So I'm glad that I caught myself before I stuck that together. So our card is just about complete. What you'll want to do is just take your Oh Hello and cut around it. And I like leaving a little bit of the white cardstock showing from behind. That way it gives it the look of die cut. Now you don't have to do that if you don't want to. If you want to cut yours right up against where the ink is, by all means do that. Okay, so I've got that done. Now I need my Big Shot to cut out the heart, so I'm going to move everything out of the way really quick and get my Big Shot in here. I'm going to be using the Sweet and Sassy Heart framelits to do this with, and I'm going to use this one, which is the 5th from the largest heart. I've got a piece of my Blushing Bride cardstock, and I'm just going to run this through the Big Shot and get that cut out. Now we can finish building our card. We're going to use snail to attach the heart right on top of that silver doily, just like that. And my preference for this, you can use the mini glue dots if you like, but I really like using these foam adhesive strips. So I'm just going to cut into that one, and I'm going to cut enough that looks like it is the right length for the back of this little sentiment. Flip that over and stick that down. Something that I like about these foam adhesive strips is they're actually thicker than the dimensionals, and I really wanted this popped up off the card quite a bit, so I like using those for that reason as well. So here are our 2 cards. Aren't they so cute? And see, now that you look back and the inks are dry, you can tell where I used that color lifter in there to highlight those areas. And as you can tell, where I colored outside the line by this little bird's tail, that color lifter has moved that color back up into those tail feathers.